Ahora sí.
Now we're ready. We were going to have a bad start for this panel. Well, here we are in the first panel in the afternoon, which is definitely the most difficult one, not because of the topic, but because it's siesta time. So we had talked about the other participants in order to do like a talk show format so that you don't fall asleep. But I think the topics are interesting enough so that what they have to tell you will keep you awake. And if not, we don't have any problem with throwing some water over those who fall asleep. The topic is responsible digital citizens. There's a certain jet lag here. People who still do not manage the Spanish siesta. The topic is responsible digital citizens, and I will do a very brief introduction about citizens. We all know what it means, but digital citizens to me always makes me blink, because we are talking about a new environment, but we're not digital citizens as if we were different people from those who are in the real world. We need to behave differently in the digital world, different from what we need to do in the real world. But when we talk about digital rights as if they were different from those in the real world, I do not quite agree with this idea. It's true that this environment has certain specificities that make us take into account certain things that we didn't take into account before, or not as much. The key word here is responsibility. This is something that we don't usually want to talk about. Many people talk about the rights of the minors and of the citizens, and nobody about their rights, but never about their duties. If you follow me on the internet, you know that I like etymology, and responsibility comes from the word to respond, to account for our own actions. And for those of us who are somewhat older, we realize that there's a need for that, because we see that there are some people in our environment find it difficult to respond for their own actions. Nobody feels they're acknowledgeable for the consequences of their own actions that they did or made freely. This morning, I was updating myself in the Black Mirror episodes, and I don't want to spoil the series for you, but the last episode of the third season deals with what we are going to be talking about today. At certain levels, it's sci-fi, but I'd say that 80 to 85% is actually a reality in the digital world, and it has to do with the hatred discourse, how easy it is to say something in the social media without any consequences. The episode is called National Hatred, and the subtitle is The Game of Consequences. Consequences of what we say or do through the social media and the internet in general. After this brief introduction, I will introduce you to our panel members today. We have Cristina Carbonell. She's a consultant and pedagogical advisor for teachers and parents in e-learning projects. We also have Amalia Fernando. She comes from the Fundación Cibervoluntarios, Cyber Volunteers. They promote the use of technology to sort the gap in social environments. Also, the founder of this foundation was in the campus party in Valencia, where this idea was born. So, and this happened 17 years ago. And I'm very proud that this movement is still alive nowadays. We have Marta and Manuela, who are our protagonists. They are 15 and 13 years old, and among us, we will submit them to a third-degree interrogatoire. and we will see who wins this sort of contest. Then we have Álvaro Barona, who's an expert in communication design and digital teaching, and who has created the web generation apps. And then we have Santiago Rey. He's an expert in computer forensics. He's a member of the National Police, and he works in the safe usage of digital environments by minors. This is what I've been told to say, and now we're going to get to work. And I wanted the girls to be the protagonists here, and I would like to ask you, what do you understand by responsibility of the digital citizenships? That what responsibility lies in you and your classmates? Do you think that people are responsible, that they're totally clueless? Well, I do not know. It depends on the person. Some people do not publish anything, and I don't know if this is because they're not responsible, they do not want to take part into it, or because they do feel responsible. And sometimes we also find people who publish or post things in social media or WhatsApp groups, and what they say, they would not dare to say it in the real world, so maybe they hide behind their digital accounts. Do you demand any acknowledgeability when they do something that is wrong? When I think that somebody has done something wrong in the social media, we talk about it among friends or to my parents, but this needs to be something very serious, not something silly like somebody call me silly and I can sort it myself and I don't need to call the police for these minor things. We're not going to have a very structured way of dealing with this, so you can participate whenever you want. We work mainly with cyberbullying. You who are young and who share the digital and social media, do you think that this is a reality or that it doesn't exist? I think that in my case, I think that cyberbullying has been exaggerated. I haven't endured it myself, but if people mock somebody, they do not do it only on the internet. I haven't experienced that. I have had some arguments through WhatsApp, but nothing really serious. So I think that is something that happens, but I haven't experienced it. And I think that we tend to exaggerate it when we talk about it on the internet, because it does happen face to face in the real world. I agree with that. It looks like everybody has been through that, but I think that's very isolated cases. Don't you all have the feeling that compared to the intensive use that the teenagers do of the social media, the news that reach the mass media is really dismissible? Well, I'm going to turn this question around. I think that we only talk about the negative part, or mainly about the negative part. There's a message that says that the internet is real evil in our world, and I think that today we're talking about this. We're having this debate. Internet is 99% positive, but what on the media, what really sells is the negative part. To say that the internet is wonderful will never make the headlines in a newspaper. So maybe we need to think about this and do what we're doing here today. We have talked about the creativity and the positive aspects, and now it's on us to take care of our own image on the internet. And I do not think that campaigns such as that of the cyber volunteers have, because there is an issue, because you are representing all the teenagers in the world right now. But these two teenagers are representing all the teenagers, and they show us that maybe there is a side of it where they are minimizing things that are serious, but on the other hand, at the same time, we think that the headlines are focusing only on the negative part. Borja was saying that to give more importance to the negative headlines is a problem that we have that is biasing our perception of what reality is. I have been connected to the internet since the 1990s. I can tell you a story of when I was started. There were very few of us in 1994, 95. There were very few people connected to the internet, and so every time we saw one of these news about these hackers that had been arrested or that had been committing crime on the internet, I remember my mother calling me to find out if we were involved in any of these crimes that they were talking about on the news. And because the focus is always goes to the person that you know that is involved in that. When we talk about sexting or all these evil things that are going on, you start asking about people around to the people that you know, and you realize there are so many people who are using technology in a very normal way. And I think that as adults have a certain responsibility, and the mass media have a great responsibility. Also, as parents, as teachers, we need to not believe everything is negative on the internet. We need to be responsible and understand that technology is part of our day-to-day life. And if we're not informed or qualified, we need to be trained and learn about what's going on, and so that we can be able to guide the young ones. I also wanted to say something that is one of my personal obsessions. We need to talk about the risks on the internet, but giving it a proper dimension. Every year we have a crime report on all crime levels in Spain, and the cybercrime are around 3% of all crimes committed in Spain. So when we talk about internet not being safe, we have to say that 97% of insecurities come from the real world. Although cyber crimes are increasing, the fraud, the spam are increasing in numbers, but we really need to be aware of the dimension of this problem. Imagine the number of teenagers who are on the internet in Spain. All of them. I've been told that one in Spain is not on the internet, but aside from him or her, we need to realize that all of them are on the internet. And how many bad cases or how many cases related to crime are on the news? So when we focus only in a mole, we tend to only see the mole. We need to put the problems in the right dimension and not fall in the trap of believing all the headlines, because these are baits, because bad news always sell better than good news, and we risk believing these. I've had 3 children, and they're grown-ups now, and they have proven to me that they have more common sense than we would expect, even when it comes to serious cases. One day I was worried because my daughter, a child abuser, had got into a group, and I was scared, but she told me that the girls and the boys in the group had kicked him out of the group, pretending to be part of them and of their own age. But actually, she told me that they had managed to solve the problem on their own. Yes, regarding the responsibility, as citizens have a responsibility as consumers of that information. At the end of the day, the negative news sell better than the good ones, and we click on that type of news. We need to check ourselves to understand why we do it, and I don't want next generations to do the same thing. We might be in the middle between the analogical and the digital world, and we tend to focus in the mole, as you were saying before, and we need to double check why we are all the time feeling attracted by this type of contents that are really giving us an unrealistic view on the world. I think that we need to go past the headline. I think that many news tell us about the goodness of the technologies and the digital world. Nowadays, we learn about the natural catastrophes or how we can help in 1 second. And this is thanks to technologies that are apps that are helping people with disabilities. We need to go past the headlines because we're always receiving good news about the technologies. And it's true, they do not make the first page of the newspapers, but it's true. For the most part, technologies are being used responsibly, and this is one of the things that Cyber Volunteers is supporting. I would like to add on what you said before about the crime rates, and I share this view. It's an objective data, but cyber crimes have a greater repercussion. But when we are responsible in the use of a technology, we need to highlight it better, because nowadays it's almost impossible. It's very difficult to find any crime where there's no technological device involved, and this is something we need to take into account. Obviously, sexting is not a cyber crime, but it's a bad use of technology. So I'm going to go back to the positive message because I share it, and that is why I'm in this project. But we must not dismiss the fact that the use of this technology is involved in most of the crimes that we see every day. We need to be responsible when we use technologies because it's part of our day-to-day life. I wanted to add something to this because I realize I come from the legal field, and I'm specialized in disseminating information to people who do not come from this field. It's a common idea that whatever is not a crime is legal. The legal illicit is the most serious crime, but there are different types of crimes, and there's the ethical part, and there's, for instance, piracy and intellectual property. If there's no, some things might not be legal, even though you won't be taken to court for it. So my question would be, do you think that people on the internet think that whatever is not in the criminal code can be done and that is okay?
Well, depends on the moral of the person. Because if it's a responsible person, he will say, well, I'm not going to do this because I can affect the person. But if they don't have any moral, they wouldn't care. Because if it's not going to have any legal consequences, it would be the same. Well, I think that when a person does this type of things, at least they don't think that very much. You think, well, this is illegal, I won't do it, because you have thought that this is not legal, but I don't know what's legal and what's not when I do it. Emil. So, yeah, this that you're saying, without knowing what's legal or illegal, there are many people that think, well, never mind. I mean, and they are threatening or blaming someone through the internet. But as you are behind a screen, nothing happens. Sometimes it's a criminal offense, but others it's not. But I was speaking about feelings, so to speak. If you had that person in front of you, and this person asked, why did you do this? It has to do with empathy. Don't do to the others what you wouldn't like to be done to you, so to speak. So this is the moral principle. This is like the golden rule. I won't do anything to this person, no matter I have this network privacy. So this type of behavior, do you think that people of your age, do you think that it's common with the people of your age? Or maybe they say, well, nothing, I mean, it's okay, nothing matters, etc. No, for example, if I insult somebody face to face, well, I mean, I insult this person face to face and through my cell phone. I mean, I don't think, well, I'm going to do it on my smartphone because this person doesn't know who I am. If I have something to tell this person, I would do it face to face. That's it. Yeah, exactly the same. I mean, if you want to say something, you don't care whether it's through a screen or face to face. A different thing would be that person's reaction. Don't you have people that are much bolder through the internet and face to face they are a little bit more coward? Well, I think that through a screen is much easier because you are not facing that person and you won't be so pissed off when you see that person because it will be okay. But normally they won't be so pissed off. No, not in your case. No. And when you see that person face to face, and this person can ask you, "Why did you do this?" Well, I mean, that's okay. But if you do it face to face, maybe he could slap you. No. If I have something to tell that person, I would do it face to face. I'm going to wait to get home, and I'm going to use my smartphone. No. I do it face to face, at least in my opinion. But I have some colleagues or friends that prefer to criticize behind a screen because they feel safer. Maybe we're speaking about people that you know face to face, and maybe although you are behind a screen, you know who they are, and you know that at some moment in time you will face them, and that's different. But for example, when we consume YouTube or blogs or Instagram accounts, we follow these people. Sometimes, if we don't like what they are saying, if we disagree with them, maybe we are a little bit bolder. And as we have a screen in front of us, that makes us be bolder and to say what we think, without thinking that behind that screen there's a person like you, like me, and we must be respectful. We don't always have to say what we think, because if I see someone that doesn't think like I do on the street, I won't stop this person and I will tell them, why do you think this? I mean, it's different. And the person who creates the content, I mean, it's a content that won't be good for everyone. It will generate criticism, and we have to live with that, obviously, as far as we do it within certain borders and certain limits. If it goes beyond, we should talk to our parents to take measures of making an account private or to block, etc. Well, about knowing or not knowing the person that you're interacting with, there's another variant that it would be about not knowing the personality, the gender, the age I mean, when you interact with people that are your friends, although they are behind a nickname, you know who they are. But I don't know whether you have had experiences of having to interact with people on the internet of which you are a little bit doubtful. I mean, because you don't know whether they are older or younger, because they just have a nickname. I don't know if you've gone through that situation. Well, for example, in YouTube, you see that person's face, and you know that what you're watching in the video is a character, it's not a person itself. No, I'm not talking about the YouTube's content creator itself. For example, when there are different discussions at a thread, there's a supporter, another one is not. Maybe you don't know anything about those persons. Well, maybe you're discussing an idea, but you won't criticize them because of their ideas, because you wouldn't do it face to face, so you wouldn't do it on the internet. So in that case, you use the same concept of a responsibility in education that you would follow with people, because you understand that behind those ideas there are people. Yes, exactly. No, just a previous question, because I think that we are taking for granted that young people use the same social media that we do. So what are your the social media that you use the most? WhatsApp, Smart Chat, YouTube. Do you consider YouTube as a social media? Yes, I do. Do you interact with people that comment, or you just watch? No, I just watch videos. And that's it. So there are less odds to discuss. So who do you insult? I insult if they've insulted me. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. No, I'm a lawyer, okay? I didn't tell you, but I'm a lawyer. Okay, in terms of social media, WhatsApp, Instagram, Snapchat, and, well, I mean, but you don't use Facebook, you don't use Twitter. That's old-fashioned. So, yes, that's for old people. So, not about MySpace, of course. No. Okay. Well, I think that it is a great irresponsibility of teenagers, between inverted commas. We have a generation problem, so to speak, between adults and the generation that comes after us. And the only thing that has changed are different rules, or the flexibility of these rules. Our parents and our grandparents knew where we were going to, and they explained the rules that we should abide to. Now, today, we have a goal in front of the other one. Sometimes the ball, there are one or two balls at the field. So that flexibility is the one that makes us uncomfortable, so to speak. And we have to ask the teenagers for the responsibility that corresponds to a teenager. The rest is just hormones. It's just what they do when they are teenagers. So, or have we forgotten when we were in the 80s, the fashion that we had? I mean, now it's a little bit more transcendent, so to speak, and we have to transmit that. I think that there are privacy concepts that they don't understand, use concepts and of use time concepts that they don't understand as we do, because maybe nobody has explained that, or maybe they don't have to understand it as we do. So I think that we should understand that flexibility as a responsibility. We shouldn't try to copy our values. So maybe the values we should, but in a different context. This is a part of responsibility that I try to assume as an adult to the ones that come after me. We should ask them for the responsibility that a teenager has. Yeah, but I think that it's true that the privacy, or the anonymity, so to speak, like, for example, you say, well, we don't have any repercussions, I'm anonymous, so no problem. So for example, I like 20, you uploaded pics so that your colleagues could say that they liked it. So do you have Instagram, do you have an open Instagram, or do you choose what people can follow you? No, my Instagram is private. I don't have Instagram, but my friends have a private account of Instagram, so they upload pictures. Maybe I have a nephew that just uploads pictures for people to see them and to say that they like them. Well, I have 1,000 likes and I have 2,000 likes. No, that's the goal. That's Instagram's goal, to show to the rest of the people where you've been, what you've done. No, that's the goal of Instagram. Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know whether it's because I'm this way, but if I meet someone and I get along with this person, I mean, I don't judge people according to followers or number of likes. Because, for example, I have a picture, and if I like that picture, I upload it, and that's good, but I'm not looking for followers. I like this person, but she only has 100 followers. I'm not going to be her friend because she only has 100 followers. No, I don't do that at all. There's a chapter of Black Mirror where they set a society that is based on likes and social repercussion. It really called our attention. It was really eye-catching because Instagram is for that, how platforms change depending on the use that people do of them. it's quite significant. Maybe the platform is the same, but the use that I do or the use that you do are absolutely different. In Instagram, there has been a surprising phenomenon that has been the one of the stories and messaging. In fact, there's a project that has to do only with messaging based on the use that some users do using Instagram as a messaging tool. The adults would have said, well, we have Hangouts, we have WhatsApp, we have Skype. Why do you want to communicate through Instagram? Instagram is for a different stuff. So it's interesting to see how platforms change based on what users do with them. So their mothers are in the audience, so you don't have to confess, okay, against you. But you haven't quoted other social networks like Tinder, Badoo. I don't know whether you use them or not. I think that you don't. But as we are speaking about teenagers, in a while they'll start using these social media. And, well, in this case, people, it's about meeting people. These social media are about meeting people. I remember that when the internet started with first chats, etc., with IRC, Hispano, etc., people said, "Oh, you talk to absolutely strangers." Oh, that was some kind of weird some years ago, but that's not the case anymore. In a while, you'll start to see the different world about flirting, about meeting guys through Tinder, etc., but there's another chapter that has to do with relationships and contacts through the internet. It gives a new jump, so to speak, because that's to open the privacy circle to strangers. And I think there's a Tinderization of relationships. As there are many guys, for example, while I move on, next one, etc., and as I have many people waiting, so to speak, there's some kind of crisis. I can see that in my daughter, in how long relationships last and how deep they get, so to speak. But as we are speaking about some kind of old teenagers, so to speak, it will need deep conversations between parents and children, not about technology, but about sentimental relationships. Because I've seen that there has been a dramatic change in that. I don't know what you think about this. Well, in the case of Tinder, that for example, I move right, I like it, I move left, I don't like it, it's quite superficial, I think. I think that they are too young for that, but they should start to talk and they should start to understand that relationships are not just a smartphone that I say I like, I don't like, although we do this in our daily life. At least I do. At least I do, okay? I don't know you. Oh look how cute that is. Oh, okay. But they do that on Instagram or YouTube. You meet someone that says the same as you do. You get along well. You start chatting. You start chatting on a private window, and it is a more developed way to meet someone. But it happens at these ages. So I'm talking to a guy through the internet. I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't tell us, okay? But no, I haven't. Well, I haven't either. But my friends on the Instagram, they follow accounts of cute guys or handsome guys, so to speak. Well, no, don't explain what you meant with that, okay? No, they are cute and they chat and they meet each other. So they don't have to move to Tinder when they grow old. It's already happening. Her account, for example, Manuela's account is private, but maybe not all her friends are people that she knows face to face. And one thing is not a guarantee of the other thing. What percentage of the people that are in your social media are not physically known for you? Out of my friends, if you have a look at 500 followers, well, maybe I physically know more or less 100, 200 are from high school, and the rest are people that I don't know physically. and all the accounts, different things, etc. So there are people that we don't know physically, of course. Out of my followers, I don't have so many followers. I don't have 500. But I think, well, I don't know whether the fact that they are 1 year they are 1 year older means that I know them. I mean, there are people that I know that have 1 or 2 years more than me. Maybe I haven't talked to them alone, but I know them. Not knowing them or haven't seen their faces, I think that I don't have many followers. Well, there's a problem of terminology, I think. The generation of parents that the coolest thing that they know is Facebook. It's a symmetrical network where if you're a friend of you, the other one is your friend. It's a symmetrical network. You have to explain how an asymmetrical network works, or a meritocratical network where people follow the others because I expose myself, I say something, I do a GIF or whatever. So this difference between educators, parents, just to resume the topics from previous panels, we have this type of problems because it's difficult from the family to help when you don't know how the network works from inside, because eventually we think that everything's like Facebook. And you've touched a topic that's pretty interesting, the parents' surveillance of what their children do in social media. In my family, I have a sister-in-law that likes new technologies, but when her children started to use them, she created a nickname and she tried to be her friend. So she was Marisol. We all knew who Marisol was. But well, I mean, have ever your parents told you to be in your social media or not? Well, my messages are mine, and my parents respect that. But my mother follows me on Instagram. She controls the pictures that I upload, the amount of followers. If I suddenly have 1,000 followers, my mother would ask me who they are. My mother controls me, but I have the privacy of my messages. The pictures are just public, between inverted commas, but my messages are mine. I don't chat to people that I don't know. You mean private messages, not the public messages, because she can see them. The comments on the foot of the pics, yeah. But you don't make any comment. You don't make any comment in a picture about that you're going to hang out or whatever. You will do that through a private message. So for the ones of you that don't know that, there are public and private messages. Of course, you must take that into account. I told my daughter, well, it's not that I see it. If I can see it, anybody can see it. Well, at home, my mother has the password of my cell phone, and she can get into my smartphone whenever she wants and do whatever she wants with it. And it's true that she controls it, and I guess that some days she would have a look at it. I don't know. Oh gosh. Well, I don't know whether she does it or not, but I have nothing to hide. I mean, she can read whatever she wants, every chat that she wants. You're 15, don't you? Yes. Wait for another year. Just wait for another year. No, but it is what we were saying this morning. I mean, it's not that, for example, when a 9 or 10 years old boy gets a smartphone, it's not the same that a 13 or 14 years old girl that gets a smartphone, because you know your children after so many years. So it's about giving a progressive responsibility, more autonomy, always being together and never setting aside. You trust on your mother because she doesn't have to look at your cell phone if she sees nothing weird, so to speak. So it's a both way trust, I guess. I think that's the magic word, trust. That's the most difficult part. The fact of making all the previous steps, it's great, but now we have to start thinking about critical things like when do we start, how do we do it, the relationship between educators, parents, and children, because the way that we have to create of learning together and sharing and accompanying is towards that goal of creating that trust scenario. Problems, events, of course, will emerge. more or less, as when we go out to the street. It's impossible not to fall down, for example, not to trip, or not to find a thief at the corner. But we have to get that trust zone so that they come to us as parents or educators to speak about a problem. Today, we are seeing that they know how to manage some things very well. They are doing it very well, but what we have to do is to think of, everything that we've seen this morning, because we have to create that trust scenario. It has to exist. I'm going to make a legal bracket, just a pill, because this morning there was a piece of news about a teenager that has claimed against her parents because of uploading so many pictures of him since he was a kid. And there has been an introspection to his right to privacy. So, because he had been overexposed. It was in Italy, I think. So, a journalist has asked me, and there are some statements of myself, if it's possible that happens in Spain. And it's possible, of course, it can happen in Spain. There are many parents that think that as they are under legal age, their privacy is theirs. Parents. And no, that's not the case at all. They have the responsibility, the absolute responsibility of taking care of them. And there are some parents that, as they are like an extension of them, they upload all the pictures, and not only pictures, but also the funny anecdotes that their children don't like at all, because with these anecdotes, they could be, they could be bullied even at school. So, we are not talking about an indemnity, but we should take into account that our children's privacy and our children's image is theirs, not ours. We just manage it. And since they are 14, this has been said by the Supreme Court, since they are 14, they have a progressive right to privacy and image and honor. Even from the point of view of data privacy, since they are 14, they don't need their parents' authorization in social media. They used to need it, but that's not the case anymore. I think that the new law says that they should be 16, but from 16 to 18, that it is when they claim for privacy. No matter they have less than 18 years old, we shouldn't invade their privacy. There has been a recent judgment that says that a mother concerned for her daughter, she invaded her privacy, her smartphone, her PC to know what was going on. And she was being blackmailed. Her daughter was being blackmailed. So thanks to that, they were able to arrest him, and that's it. The blackmailer said that the mother had invaded her privacy without her authorization. So the Supreme Court has said that we have the task of controlling our children until they are 18. And this doesn't give us the right to send a Trojan through our children's smartphones, of course. But they could be victims of a crime, or they could even be the authors of a crime, because all parents think that our children could be a victim of cyberbullying. We never think that our children could be cyberbulliers. So, no matter we think that they are at risk because of being a victim, or because they are creating a risk to other person, we have the obligation of controlling them. But they don't give us a green card, so to speak. So, I'm going to send a Trojan, and I see everything they write, who they're writing to, and I insist. Since they start being children and they are teenagers, they have a progressive right to exercise their privacy and honor. Well, according to this, the blogger mothers are really trendy. I'm on Instagram too, as a mother. And it's true that, for example, as a user, I really love that other mothers share specific moments and specific aspects of their lives to see how they manage when their children get angry, or you go to the other side and you could say, well, I would like that my children could tell me that he has seen this. How did I take the diaper off, or I mean, this type of thing. So we are talking about this double moral. As a consumer, I'm really thankful for the fact of having people that are generous when sharing what is working with other people. But in that sense, I would share things of my children without showing their faces and without these personal information. So it's about setting the line that I wouldn't cross. Both teenagers and adults, I mean, that sometimes we cross that line without being conscious of that. So we should reflect about the fact of, is this the way that I want to go through? Is this what I want in my life? And have you ever asked your parents about anything that they have uploaded about you, or the other way around? Have you given pieces of information that you shouldn't have given? Well, I'm sure that if I get into my mother's Facebook, I'm sure that I will see many pictures of mine, and I don't want that. But for example, at the school pics, now they've created a website to upload pictures. Well, my mother signed a paper to upload my pics, and I don't want that. I don't like my school, and I don't want people to know that I go there. That's it. My mother usually uploads pictures of mine. I don't know in Facebook, but she does it on Instagram. And I have no problem with that. I mean, I know that my mother is followed by her friends, and my mother won't accept anybody that can hurt me with my pictures. And it's not used that you say, well, she's uploading pictures of everything we do, my siblings and I. No. Just a specific moments in time. I'm okay with that. And have you been told about giving information that you shouldn't have given? No, we haven't. We haven't. But in this case, I think that as regards what parents upload or do not upload, I think it's a responsibility that affects all of us. Maybe you don't have the level of experience that we have, because we always think on the wrong things, and we must all be responsible. I mean, this is a technology that is very new. It's really powerful. It can be used for many things, but it has two risks. So we must all be responsible. I know this, and I feel that because I always learn different things. I think that they are the best users of technology, and the ones that can use it absolutely. I always learn new tricks or new things to do. But in terms of responsibility, we must teach ourselves, not only them. In fact, they are much more experienced than us many times. Today, for example, you are proving that you are much more experienced than we are. Some time ago, we launched a campaign with an operator that wanted to show the latest technology with pieces of advice for children with tablets, cell phones. And when they turned around, the animator wanted to show things. And when he turned around, they had changed the password. They had hacked the tablet. So, I mean, parents usually say we have to teach the use of new technologies. No, they learn it very quickly. We have to teach them the values. It's not the same. Driving a car is not the same that going through a road. So many of the responsibilities that we want to convey, we've always said that you have to walk the talk. So many of these bloggers, mothers that say, well, I'm concerned because my kid is playing with the smartphone or video games, and she says this while she has a Candy Crush on her smartphone. So eventually, one of their children complains is that, well, they tell me not to use a cell phone, but they are using it all day long. So it depends on the adult's attitude. Well, in my case, well, my parents use the cell phone and the PC very much, and they tell me, well, you spend all day long with my cell phone. Yeah, I do, but you do too. So it's all a bit contradictory. And if they do it, they're adults. I guess that they have their reasons to do it. Well, my mother uses the cell phone all day long, and she wants us to be 30 minutes or 15 minutes a day. And she spends all day long, and during dinner, for example, she says, "No, don't use the cell phone." And she says, "Well, excuse me, I have to send a message. I have to do whatever." No, she spends all day long with the smartphone in her hand. So that's a little bit weird.
Who, I think they come here to settle the score. I think that the conclusion today is that before dinner, all mobiles need to be removed from the table. What we see here is a topic of that we have talked about in a way, which is education around technology, about the values that we mentioned before. Maybe the platform will change, the support will change, but the values such as education, or being a good person, being very clear and what's right and wrong, and people who sends you a WhatsApp message without greeting you before with a hello or a good morning. This good manners habits that we used to have, we need to keep them also in the digital world. If we are sitting around a table having dinner, let's put the mobile phones aside. When we talk about books, it looks like everything around the book is good, but imagine a dinner where everyone is reading his own book or her own book, and people would say these people are crazy. And this is what we're doing with technology nowadays, and it has a lot to do with our manners, with the way we relate to others, etc. Would you like to add something about it? Well, mainly what I said before, it's not just them, it's us too. We're used to seeing this funny picture of people who meet for a beer and each of them is having a mobile in their hand. And when people are walking down the street and reading things on their mobile without looking at the road ahead. And this is something we need to work on together. Obviously, each of us are educating our children, and you need to convey certain values, but for every aspect of their lives. And as a mass, we need to learn the ways to incorporate this technology, and at the same time remaining people who communicate among us. Among all these ideas, I see that all of us are very aware of all these ideas and all of these values, but the moment we step out of this room, we are all going back to our old habits. So I always suggest that we take it step by step so we can really change our behaviors. For instance, I realized recently that I had wasted 2 hours checking my Instagram account, Facebook, Twitter, and playing Candy Crush when I was going to go to sleep. And I was very upset at myself because I realized that those 2 hours I had spent in something very superficial instead of reading, for instance. And my alibi for myself was that my mobile phone, I used it as an alarm clock in the morning. And I realized, I said to myself, well, I'm going to buy an old-fashioned alarm clock in Amazon. And then I saw that I had an old one in my house that I hadn't been used. And since then, I have made a commitment to myself of leaving the mobile outside of the room and not using it because it had made me change my behavior. It's good to take it out of the table when we're having dinner, to leave them all in one certain area in the house like some families do. And we really need to carry out this self-assessment, and we need to admit it as if this was a drug. We need to admit that we're addicted. But Marta, Manuela, do you find it weird to be with your friends, each of you with a mobile phone in their hands? If there's a person who's not there because they couldn't be there that day, if somebody opens the group chat to say we're missing you, and everyone then starts and joins in the conversation in the group, but 5 minutes after that, after chatting with this person, then we all leave our mobiles aside. Me, like Marta, there are some times that we can talk about something about, for instance, oh, I didn't like the maths class today, and you start chatting through the WhatsApp instead of talking with your friend, but this is very short-lasting. As a teacher, as a professor in university with students 20, 21 years old, is that they cannot be 5 minutes away from their mobile phones. In one classroom, I started taking the mobiles of those who could not control themselves. I asked them to please not check the mobile phones and to pay attention in the classroom. So I think that we need to educate them to be responsible of what they do, but we are making a mistake here when we don't teach them to self-control themselves. And those who designed Facebook admitted that they have an addictive element in the notifications, in the likes notifications, that make you want to be all the time aware if somebody has liked something that you posted, because the prize is immediate, and you can see it in the new generations. Not because I don't see this in my children, but in my students. They cannot wait for a prize in the long term or in the middle term. They need it immediately. They cannot wait for 5 minutes to check their smartphones. Out of a 2025 student classroom, I had to take 10 smartphones of people who had already been warned not to use their mobile phones in the classroom. And I think that they are old enough, and it's not like in the school or primary school where you need to put your smartphone in your locker because you're not allowed to use them in the classroom. We need to think that besides values, we need to teach them self-control. There's a generation of people without any self-control. I don't want to talk about addiction because this might be misinterpreted, but the need of receiving this immediate satisfaction, like a notification or a like, you cannot wait to see. And this happens even when we drive, even to adults. They cannot wait until they arrive to wherever they're going, because they need to know who's writing to them, who's sending them a message. And many accidents are taking place because of this need to know. And we really need to train this skill, this self-control. Are we doing this right now? What do you think? Do you think that among your classmates and in your environment, people have the self-control to not see the notification? It's true. Every time you get a message, you want to know who's writing to you. But I think there's a big gap before somebody takes the mobile from you. If I see a message coming in, I turn it around to see who has sent it. What would happen if somebody took it from you? That I would be worried, and I would be curious to know who is it. And if I deactivate the notifications, I would be even more anxious to know who's right, if somebody is writing to me. So if you cannot wait until the end of the classroom to learn in the recess what's been going on in the world, just in case you need to save the world yourself. But if you get a notification in your classroom, you just turn around your mobile phone and that's it. What happens if you don't turn it around? Nothing would happen, but it's just curiosity. You just want to know. What if you silence your mobile phone? That's what causes the addiction, curiosity. Yeah, I can live without my mobile, but you see a notification coming in and you immediately want to know what's on. In your mind, you see this notification number and you want to check who's writing to you. And then once you start, you see that there's this notification, then this connects to another video and maybe to another piece of news and to something else. And it happens what you said before, that you spend 2 hours doing nothing basically. And we end up devoting too much time and more than we would like to devote to our smartphones. Well, if you have your mobile to use it as an alarm clock, in fact, you want to use it. if you have the alarm clock in your telephone, it's there for you to use it. But I think it makes sense that if they have the alarm clock in their mobile, it's for you to use it, same as a torch, for instance. If it's there, it's for something. In the classroom, we cannot use the smartphones or get in the school with your smartphone on. You need to turn it off at 8, and if you don't leave until 5, you cannot use it. You cannot use it in the recess time or anything. So when I'm in the classroom at school, I'm not thinking, oh, somebody could have written to me, or would this friend have written to me or something. But if I am studying at home and I receive a notification, I check it. If I don't, nothing bad happens, but I'd rather see it. The problem is if you're studying and you get notifications all the time, are you really focusing in what you're studying? I haven't had any problems until now to be studying and quit studying just to check the notifications. I don't see that I have got worse grades because of this. Me neither. But if we have an exam, then all the messages would be related to the exam. They're not about anything else. Unless there is somebody else more interesting that comes into the conversation. Well, it's funny to me that I haven't gotten any worse grades with your mobile. But have you tried to study without your mobile on? Yes, actually, my grades have gone up since I work with my mobile in my room. Excuse me, lawyer, there are certain things that you cannot admit in public. In my second year in high school, there were children who stole exams and they passed the pictures around. So if you didn't have a mobile phone, you actually had to study for everything, especially when there are several teachers that give the same test to many groups. Okay, so it was very practical when you had a mobile then, right? With that behavior, these people will actually be working in a company, and we have seen in the meetings in businesses, our mobiles are very important in our business meetings. Many people are actually checking their mobile phones while at meetings, and we criticize the teenagers for doing that in their own place of work, so to speak, in their high schools. But the fact is that many grown-ups do it. And also when there are so many conferences over the internet, you see people who are not paying any attention at all, and they're just answering their emails. And it doesn't make much sense, because if that meeting was not important at all, well, let's not have it. But if nobody is paying attention, why have it in the first place? I think that we need to educate our children for the world in which they're going to be living. But I think we're in a transitional stage. For instance, I see the students who always go to the last row in the classroom with their laptops, and you see them laughing like mad, and you're aware that what you're saying is not that funny for them to be laughing all the time. So maybe what we need to have is fewer unnecessary lessons and fewer unnecessary meetings, so that when you finally get together, we're all paying attention, and the rest of the time we devote it to watch videos or responding to emails. I work in university as well. That's very typical, especially in bigger classrooms with 100 students, and you see that only 5 students are actually looking at you, and the rest are maybe dozing off or just looking at their mobile phones, and you really don't appreciate their coming. There's no point in their coming. People who I work with are always checking their mobile phones, and I think we have an addiction. I don't want to use another word, and I think we have to deal with it as we deal with any other addiction. We need to see what's going on in the world, what's going on in Twitter, because wow, what if the world ended right now and I was just here in my biology course? What would happen then? This does not happen only to them, but to everyone. What I do is I silence my mobile phone when I'm at work, and when I leave, I check it. Well, at school, I understand that there are people using their smartphones in certain topics, because there are certain topics that are really totally relevant for me. If I want to study medicine, what point is there in studying history, for instance? So I will be distracted and looking at the ceiling and not paying any attention to the lesson, because it's pointless for my future, and I will study for it for the exam, but it's totally useless. I was thinking this is quite relative thing when you say that this is not gonna be useful for your future. Well, maybe some things you won't be needing in your day-to-day life, but it's never an extra. There's no superficial knowledge. It's just general culture. We're used to learning and acquiring knowledge in a visual way, and we need to gear up and make it more fun for you, students. Maybe you can use a Draw My Life, where a drawer has explained their lives, and it's more interesting, and a classroom is devoted to other things that can be taught better. Well, I'm a bit funny in that, because I love studying and I love learning from my teachers. So I might be funny or weird, and I love learning. So when I don't need to have my mobile phone with me, I forget about it. Because since I was little, when I was in the school, I knew that my mobile phone was not accessible while I was at school. And when I'm having exams, I like to leave my mobile phone outside of my room. But because it's uncomfortable for me, it makes me nervous to receive notifications all the time, because I kept getting them, and I really get anxious. And all the messages, even if they're direct messages from Instagram, if I have these notifications activated, it's messages like people complaining about this teacher or the exam that they're going to have the next day, and I don't like that, so I just leave it outside. I suppose that for people it's easier to pay attention if the classes are entertaining, but I like all my lessons, even if it's just with a book. So I don't know, it's just the way our teachers teach us. And as you can see, these girls are very different. One of them is 13 and the other one is 15. We'll see what happens when the 13-year-old girl is 15, because I always tell my girl that until she was 13, she was my little princess, and when she turned 15, she became the exorcist girl. But I would like to finish this panel with her opinions, because I think it was an interesting panel and we don't want to delay the rest of the panels, and also because we have been talking for over an hour and I want to check my smartphone right now to see what's going on in the world.
Okay. I'm going to take all those 5 minutes, just so you know. Yeah. Buenas tardes. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Babbitt. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Digital Citizenship Institute, so thank you to Mary Alice for having me here today. Thank you to Maria for assembling such a passionate group of people who care about a very important subject. Thank you to the LSC interpreters and to our English to Spanish translators, because Buenas tardes is the extent of my knowledge of Spanish. And I apologize in advance because I'm about to make you swear, so I hope that doesn't make you uncomfortable. Mostly, I would love to thank the people under 18 that are in our audience today. And I know a bunch of you had to leave, but if you're under 18 and you're still here, stand up, please. Everybody, please, if you're under 18. I cannot tell you how important it is to have these people in the room with us today, because way too many of these conversations take place at them, not with them. This is what makes us different. This is what makes this conversation and others like it important, that we're not talking at our youth, we're talking with them. And after you see people like Curran and Sante, and I got to meet Juan last night, after you see their voices and you hear their passion for the subject, you know how important it is to work with them and to learn from them. Thank you very much. Thanks for being here. Okay, so I'm going to jump in with a story of my personal growth into social media. And I know what you're thinking already. What's this old guy up here doing talking about social media? Here's my reality. About 14 years ago, my oldest son was in high school. And for 3 straight days, he didn't do his chemistry homework. Very unlike him. He was a good athlete and a good student. I said, why aren't you doing your homework? He said, well, I've been on Facebook talking to Kayla, his girlfriend at the time, now his wife. I said, well, Facebook, what the hell is Facebook? So he showed me. I said, yeah, we're not doing that anymore. Get your homework done. So that was my first exposure to anything having to do with social or digital media. About a year later, I was running a company of 600 people, and my HR, Aunt Lita, I called her, came to me and said, we have a problem. A good number of your employees are sending naked pictures to each other. What? They're doing what? And then she showed me the proof of visions I will never get out of my brain. And I went, oh, that's just not right. It was being done on social media. Left that company, started a new startup called U-Turn. We help college students ascend into the workplace through internships and getting good mentors and personal branding, soft skill development, that kind of thing. And 6 weeks before we launched the company, after we'd done this big college tour, we found out that the colleges didn't have any money. It was right in the middle of the recession, 2010. They were out of money. They couldn't be our customers. So we had to pivot. We had to go from a B2B model working through the colleges to a B2C model working directly with the students. And one of my young team members said, no problem, Mark, we got this. We're gonna go on social media. We're gonna go blog. We're gonna take digital over. We're gonna give everything we know for free to show value to our potential customers, and then they'll buy from us. And I said, that is the dumbest effing idea I have ever heard in my life. That cannot happen. Sent them back and said, think of something else. 3 weeks later, they came back and said, this is it. I said, this is just bullshit. This is never going to work. And they argued and they won. So we tried it. A few months later, I finally got the nerve to do it myself, and I went on a Twitter chat, a career Twitter chat, and in 60 minutes, I met 200 people from all over the world I would have never met otherwise. People as passionate as you are about this subject were passionate about that subject. And I went, okay, I think I'm starting to get this. Right? If I can meet 200 people in 60 minutes, this is powerful stuff. I think we can do this. So I became like that smoker who after 26 years stopped smoking, and now everybody else has to stop smoking. That was me when I went back in the office the next day. Everybody had to be on social media right now, including me. So that's my ascension into social media, and both the negative, as you can see, and the positive. We ended up growing a company with $0 in traditional advertising. We grew this company into something pretty amazing, and all on the back of social and digital media, all on the back of solid relationships. And what I learned along the way is social is a mindset. It isn't Twitter, it isn't Facebook, it isn't Instagram, it isn't LinkedIn. It's up here. It's what we do with it. And the analogy I like to use is every time there's a plane crash, it's on all the news broadcasts. Right? 163 people dead in Newfoundland. But we never hear about the planes that landed safely. Well, that's how cyberbullying is. That's how sexting is. That's how teen suicide is. We hear about the negative, we never hear about the positive. And that's a mindset. Oops, I went back. This guy does not help. At all. Zero. Right? Regardless of your political beliefs.
We're from Canada.
Yeah. Liar. This guy's not helping anything. The divisiveness, the argument, the constant arguing, the grandstanding, right? In the United States, this is considered our leader and subsequently our role model. And because he's on Twitter every hour of every day, he is our digital role model. And our kids deserve more than this, a lot more than this. So that's when I started getting involved. Even during the political campaign, started getting along with Mary Alice saying, you know, it's really funny. We're talking about fear. We're talking about negatives. We're not talking about the positives. And we got to fix that. We have to change the conversation. And so we started talking about our business and civic leaders and certainly our educators as role models and their ability to lead by example. And in the last panel, I thought it was funny that some of the conversations were about, well, could you put your cell phone down and study? Well, I have a 10-year-old at home, and when my wife says, how long have you been on that device all day? I know he just wants to look at her and go, really, Mom? You have not set your phone down all evening. Right? So we have to be role models in this area. So that's what we started talking about. And we realized that before we can be digital leaders ourselves, we have to kind of set some ground rules. So I very informally, when I wrote a book, came up with this set of ground rules. First of all, we must be role models and mentors. We can't ask things of our youth, our children, our friends, those we mentor, that we don't do ourselves. We have to lead by example. We have to be active listeners and communicators. And especially us old white guys in leadership positions, we were never taught to be vulnerable. We were never taught to be good listeners. We were command and control, dictatorial. Right? That's how we did things. Just, you're lucky you have a job, just go get the job done. Right? We were never taught to actually listen to somebody. All right? We have to be relentless givers. Has anybody read a book called Give and Take by Adam Grant? All right, put it on your list. It's a must read. He breaks people down into 3 categories. Takers, those who don't offer much to anyone else. Matchers, those who will help others, but only if there's something in it for them. And then givers. In our book, we took this to the next level with Adam's permission and said the relentless givers are the best leaders. Those always sharing good information online and off. Those always serving as a mentor. Those always serving as a role model. Right? Key. That's a real key to digital leadership. We have to serve as chief facilitation officers. As leaders, the more people we introduce with commonality, the more of a leader we are. In the old days, we kept knowledge to ourselves. We kept people to ourselves. We kept our relationship to ourselves. Now, if we want to be a digital leader, we actually want to share those communications. We want to share those relationships. We want to help people, build people up. And we do that through what we call open circles. Open is an acronym for Ordinary Person, Extraordinary Network. And especially on digital social media, it is really powerful. Because then you can start sharing what you know. And formally or informally, you start serving as a mentor to others you don't even recognize. They might be a follower on Twitter, but you may never talk to them, but you're having an impact on their lives. And the last one, and this is especially important to the panels we heard today, is the word social media for a while there almost became a misnomer because it wasn't very social. It wasn't very human at all. So in our book, we use this last phrase no less than 13 times. More social, less media. Stop talking about yourselves and start helping others. Start being social. Start being human. As Mary Alice said earlier today, behind every tweet, behind every post, there's a human being. And we don't know enough about them to judge them or to argue with them. Right? Be social. All right, with all that in mind, how do we, as leaders, how do we help people jump from being just a consumer of social and digital media to a contributor, right? Even a curator status is better than just consumer. And here it is. We have to remain positive ourselves. We do have to be a relentless giver. When we find something good, share it. Okay, I'll give you an example. How many people have heard personally of a cyberbully instance? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yet that's all everybody's talking about. Right? There's a good example of remaining positive and being a giver. How many people have ever heard of a young man named David Deutschland? He is a grandfather in the U.S. who, after he retired, has spent 12 hours a day, every day, holding babies in an EQ ward in a hospital, premature babies, just holding them, making them feel comfortable. That's all he does. Doesn't get paid for it. That's all he does. 99 million views on YouTube. And yet nobody's heard of him. Right? Nobody's giving that positive energy. You've heard of him? Good for you. Good. Right? You too? Impressive stuff, right? Nobody's spreading that word. We have to seek out mentors and influence ourselves. Why? Because the digital age is only 10 years old. When it comes to our morals and our ethics, we have centuries of precedent to set in our communities, in our churches, from our parents, from our grandparents, from the stories that we've heard and told, centuries of experience. Education, decades, sometimes centuries, same thing. When it comes to social media, this whole thing's only 10 years old. The digital age, the social age is only 10 years old. We're not the experts. We have no authority. In many cases, we don't have any respect. Young people look at us old guys and go, right, grandpa's social. Right? So we have to seek out those mentors. We also need to seek out reverse mentors. All right, I learned more last night at dinner about Star Wars from one than I could have ever possibly considered learning. Reverse mentor on Star Wars in one dinner conversation. Right? Talk to them. Learn something. Learn something they're passionate about. Next is build a relationship first. So important. Too many people on social media are those takers that Adam Grant talked about. We're always selling something. We're always spamming something. Build the relationship first. If it's your job to sell, if your livelihood depends on it, fine. Eventually you're going to sell, but at least give people the respect of building a mutually beneficial relationship first. Don't just go on Facebook and start selling crap. Nobody appreciates that. Nobody likes that. And finally, we need to create social proof, both the leaders and the people that we're leading, of our passions and our capabilities. Okay, I'll give you an example of social proof right now. About half the people in this room, based on Twitter, have already tweeted that they're here today. Right? Is that about right? Yes? That is social proof that you care about this topic enough to show up today. Now, everybody who looks at your Twitter feed, Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever, knows you were here talking about this subject today. Social proof of your passions, of your interests, right? Same thing every time you talk about Game of Thrones on the internet, right? You're considered an enthusiast. Every time you talk about your 10-year-old and his success in baseball, you're obviously an enthusiast, right? No matter what you post about, that you're now aligned with that subject, right? But it's funny that especially the young people that I mentor, they'll go to a major industry conference, they'll show up, they'll listen to all the keynotes, they'll go home, they'll sleep good because they feel good about themselves, but there's no pictures from the event, there's no posts from the event, there's no interviews from the event, there's no sharing other people's views of the event. It's like they weren't even there. Right? Well, how do you create social proof of your passions and interests if you're not actually using social media for anything other than what you had for lunch today? Right? Social proof is a huge issue. We're going to talk more about that in a minute. This is what I do when I'm serving as a mentor or role model to a young person, college all the way down to a 10-year-old. These are the questions I ask. And I ask them to ask themselves these questions actually. What do I stand for? What are my core values? What do I want to learn? Who do I want to talk to? How can you reach me? And how can I help? The last one is incredibly important. Because if people think you're actually interested, that you care enough to help a cause, help an effort, boom, social proof. You're now engaged. You're not a consumer of social media anymore. You're not just a curator. You are actually active in the process. Right? That last question is really important. Once they start answering those questions, it starts to work out for them. It isn't, somebody said earlier they felt guilty about being on social media for 2 hours every night. Where's the alarm clock guy? Did he leave? All right. So everybody remember the alarm clock conversation? That was me. 2 hours every night, every morning, regardless. I blocked it out on my calendar, 2 hours every morning so I could catch up on social media from the day before. And then when I started asking these questions of myself, then I went, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Because it isn't what I stand for. It isn't what I care about. Right? Okay. Which ties us back to social proof. Because you can't actually exhibit social proof unless you have the answers to the questions from the last slide. Social proof is important to us and the people that we mentor. It starts with a very simple question. And I mentioned one of my communities is a career site. We actually turn the top question, who knows what you're really good at, really, really good at? We turn that into 2 questions in our career conversations. What are you really, really good at? And who will pay you to do that? That's a much different question than what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? And then it helps answer all the questions from before. When you meet people on social media, and you start to build those mutually beneficial relationships and you build the social proof, will that person recommend you the next time a job comes up? Or an opportunity comes up? Or an invitation to a conference like this comes up? Will they say, yeah, you know what? You and I should really go to this thing together. Or yeah, I have somebody perfect for that graphic designer job you have. Right? That's what social proof fixes. Quantified impact statements are huge. And I don't care if it's on social media, your resume, everywhere. Talk about, spent 8 hours today at Digital Citizenship BS. Was that 10 minutes or 5 minutes? Thank you. Because it was not going to happen in 5 minutes. All right, so quantify everything. Especially, how many people are in a mentor role right now or a leadership role with somebody younger than you right now? You are, obviously. Right? Guys, if you give them one piece of advice, have them quantify what they're doing. Quantify their community service hours. Quantify the amount of time they spend on their homework. It shows passion. It shows interest. Right? Huge difference maker. All right? Amplify your connections. Right? Don't just, we've heard this all day, don't just count likes, followers, the vanity metrics. Completely, absolutely irrelevant to how good you are on social and digital media. Worry about your connections and the quality of them. And the last thing is, we now live in the testimonial economy, and we absolutely have to have people talking about us. We're going to talk about that more than that in a minute, but in your notes, write down how important testimonials are. Okay? Because of this. We're in phase 2 of social media right now. In phase 1, everybody became an expert. Did anybody notice that trend? Everybody became an expert. Just last week, I got a DM Twitter from a 23-year-old female who had 18 followers on Twitter who wanted me to sign her up as a social media expert for my companies. Really? Right? I don't think so. Didn't work out. Okay? That's where quantifying helps. All right? That's a person who is marketing or selling or spamming. Now, what if that same person had said, you know, I just started this social media account, but I've been doing this for 3 years for 12 different companies. Here are some examples of how people feel about my work. Let's talk. Much different conversation, right? Because it's quantified, it shows passion, it shows interest. And here's the key. When we're talking about ourselves, and when you're serving as a mentor, helping young people learn how to adapt to social and digital media, convince them that what they say about themselves doesn't really matter. And it might be considered spamming, selling, marketing, anything negative. But when somebody else stands up on social media and says, that is the best young man I've ever met in my life. That's the best intern I've ever hired. That's the best graphic designer I've ever worked with. Now you're fully embracing the testimonial economy and you're using social and digital media for good. Huge, huge difference in how we did social media just 5 years ago compared to now. All right, this is my rule of social media. And actually, the reason it's strike through right now is because I actually made up my life rule. Anytime we're on social media and we're spending 2 hours in the morning and we're looking at the vanity metrics and we're not thinking about connections or relationships or testimonials, this is my go-to. And I catch myself online and go, oh my God, I just spent 7 minutes with a drama queen. Well, I'll never get that 7 minutes back. Right? So this is my rule. No trolls, no drama queens or divas, no fakers, no takers, no assholes. I don't know how the interpreters are going to fix that asshole thing. But I have to enunciate that very carefully. Does anybody know what an asshole is? Yeah, I know you do. An asshole is somebody who will reach out to you on social media and say, you know, I really like that post you shared. Or, I really like that article that you wrote on how to establish a great career. Would you spend the next 3 hours looking at my resume and tell me what you think? Before ever building a mutually beneficial relationship. Right? Now, chances are, if you haven't run into an asshole yet, you will. It will happen because social media has bred them. It happens all the time. All right? So that's my list. If you learn nothing else from me today, take that home because it changes your life. When you start using social media for good, all those people tend to go away. Now, in my life, I have some family members who unfortunately fall into that category, including one of my own daughters, and she admits it. But she also knows we spend a lot less time on the phone than I do with my other kids, because she knows this is my life rule. Right? So, this becomes so important to me personally that it's taken over my life too. All right, here's the deal. Here's the charge. Each one of us came here today because we care about the positive use of social and digital media. Is that a fair statement? So everybody here is equally responsible, as I am, Mary Alice, as Maria is, for changing the way we use social media and for dedicating ourselves to be positive, for using it for something good. Because if every one of us do that, we start becoming role models and mentors and digital leaders. And until we do that, it's really hard because we're not drinking the Kool-Aid. We're not stepping up ourselves. And if we don't step up ourselves, we can't ask other people to do it. Okay? Thank you very much for your time today.
Hola. Bueno, mientras nos terminamos de sentar, os voy presentando.
Well, so please take your seats. Let me introduce this last panel. Borja was saying that previous panel was the most difficult one for the nap time because this is the most difficult one because it's the last one, and it's a little bit more dense. But we'll try to simplify it from a positive point of view. This panel has to do with safe digital citizens. Cybersecurity is one of the most interesting discussions that we are holding nowadays. The other day, we saw that in the year 2014, there were 18 cyber incidents registered in Spain, and last year there were 120,000. The growth can be measured in terms of percentage. So cyber incidents affect companies, public organs, end users, and of course young people. And human being is always the weakest point of the chain. It's the most difficult thing to protect. It's the most difficult one to be aware and to apply safety measures. So the legislation that will come into force this year, the GDPR, tends to take the responsibility towards the company or toward public administration, not to the end user. So let's speak about this, how to adopt measures, like, for example, passwords that are not 12345 or are admin or something like that, your name and your surname. But first of all, and before introducing the rest of speakers, I would like to introduce the two guys that will be with us, that are Juan and Luca. Juan is 13 years old. Luca is 16. And the first question that I would like to make before giving the floor to the rest of the speakers is if you feel that when you browse through the internet, when you use mobile apps, when you chat with your friends through social media, etc., do you feel safe? Does it work? No, it doesn't. Yes, when I'm on the internet, I feel safe, except when suddenly I see a virus alert or something like that, but this doesn't happen, so, well, I always feel safe. Okay, I'm going to make a small test, okay? Do you know what a hacker is? Yes? Yeah, do you? Yes. Do you know what phishing is? Yes? No. Well, do you know what a ransomware is? Yes? Well, there's a difference level here. And what about a malware? No, I don't. More or less, yes. After this mini test, where we won't put a mark, no problem. We'll introduce the rest of the speakers. Do you think that the children are safe when they browse, when they use new technology? Let me introduce the speakers so that they can give their opinion. Mark Castro is an expert in she's a pioneer in research and division of net label in Spain. Jose Martín Aguado, high school teacher. Ofelia Tejerina, an expert in IT law and civil and administration law. We have Hector Galindo, an expert in cybersecurity and information research. He's a member of Director Plan. It's an initiative for education centers launched by different ministries. So who wants to answer first? Who wants to give this answer? Do you think that they are as safe as they perceive, as they feel? Well, it's just I'm going to put a nuance. I mean, it's not the same being relaxed and being safe. And I think that they have to set that difference. Well, when I was introduced, they told me that I had to, I was going to be asked about this. And first thing, I asked my students, I'm an English teacher at the high school, and I asked them, when I asked them about safety, what do they think? And some of them told me hackers. In terms of, they spoke about sexuality, but they don't care at all about safety. They're just concerned about getting a virus or not. But beyond that, they don't care about safety, and I think that it's something that we should think about. I was going to be more overwhelming. I was going to say that absolutely no. I'm absolutely sure that they are not safe. They don't know some basic terms, some key terms, that come from the internet. If you don't know these terms, you can't be safe, and you don't know how to act, to behave correctly in the net. I think that they are not as safe as they think. It's quite a subjective safety, because physically you can't be harmed through the internet. So until they perceive that they can be punished through the internet, or they can be hurt through the internet, they feel safe. The internet, they feel safe browsing. So I think that this type of safety is a little bit subjective. Have you ever been told at school about the risks of the internet, to use a specific app, to download a file without analyzing it previously from someone unknown? No. Well, my parents sometimes give me speeches about this. No, these speeches seem to be very helpful, and they tell me what I should and what I shouldn't do. And what do they tell you? For example, there's a pop-up window that says, well, you've won an iPhone 7, go to this website. I shouldn't do it. If I receive an email from someone that I don't know, I shouldn't read it. Or if I find a non-trustworthy website, I shouldn't download anything from there. When they speak about the internet, they start understanding this world as, well, I'm an observer. I'm browsing, but I'm safe because I'm an observer. The problem is when they are observed, they don't know that they are being observed. Have you played online with people that you don't know, and have you been insulted? Have you had any problem with some silly people? Well, this happens, for example. Playing games with 8 or 9-year-old people, they were drawing, and they had to guess out what they were drawing until they started drawing sexual drawings. Of course, there was an adult there joining that game and trying to affect young people and trying to disturb these people. So we are observers and we are browsing, but when we are interacting, there's a risk, especially if we don't know who is behind. Sometimes I've talked to young people and I've told them, but don't you realize that you can be seen by more people? And they say, no, just my group of friends. They don't know that there's a far beyond, so to speak. So, for example, it was being said in the previous panel, I have 200 friends, but how many people do you know? What percentage? I don't want to know the percentage, because you like it, it calls your attention, is whoever's cousin, is whoever's friend. I mean, there are many reasons to put people into your network, and they don't realize that these people get out of this network. It's not a closed circle, as they believe. Do you have this perception that the internet is just for your group of friends, or you have ever thought that there are companies that could access these data? There could be a cyber criminal that could access these data and use them as they want? To be honest, I don't think that they could do it. I don't know. I just think that they can do it. I think that we are highly vulnerable, but deeply we are not aware of the fact that they can do some things to us. For example, it's a difficult topic because it seems that everything is for free on the internet. Speaking about this gratuity on the internet, there's a book that is called Internet is Not the Answer. Internet no es la respuesta in Spanish. And we tend to think that everything's for free on the internet, and there are some conditions, especially in a tab that you've seen, a very curious tab that is really cool, that says, I accept the terms and conditions or privacy policy. I'm sure that you read it. Oh, in full, of course. You even print it. I don't know if I want to ask you whether you read it or not, and I don't know whether I want to ask the rest of the audience whether they read them or not. So in these terms and conditions, there are some contracts, as if we bought a house or a car, where they say what they are going to do with the information if we use that social media or if we use that app. There are some conditions, like well, let's say that to install the I don't know, the famous the waking up clock, they should have access to contacts, to the cell phone, to your calls, and this is information that comes out for free from us. And now there's a motto in IT world that says, who has the information has the power. So we are managing big bunches of information. Now we could speak about the famous big data, etc. Everything's information. And the cost of this information is the loss of privacy. This is why it's not for free. I don't know, Ophelia, if you can contribute anything else. I wanted to ask you something. What social network do you use the most? Instagram. Do you use this music network? No? I use Instagram, and I sometimes watch videos on YouTube, and you put stories, 24-hour stories, etc. Is your profile private? Yes, I do. So I couldn't get into your profile. No, you couldn't. And how many friends do you have? 100, and more or less 100. And do you know physically all these people? Yes. And do you trust them all? Well, no. Like there are 2 persons that I don't know. There are around 20 people that I don't trust very much. Can you imagine what those people can do with your pictures? Do you know what a meme is? Memes are the pictures that have a funny remarks, for example, with a funny picture and a funny comment, and it gets viral, and that is spread over. Do you want to end up being a meme? Do you know that it could happen? Someone gets a picture from you, puts a funny comment, and it gets viral. This picture is, for example, this person gets this picture. You are giving this picture for free. Are you aware of that? You are giving pictures to people. You are overwhelming them a little bit. My friend, yeah, this is starting to be a little bit overwhelming for them. Okay, no, the law can act and can help you, okay? Don't worry. So let's stop overwhelming these children. So let's speak about the parents' role on this. So how can parents help people or children be aware, or they can even impose different safety measures so that children are protected on the internet? Well, first of all, they have to give some guidelines before any device. First of all, you have to explain what it is about. I don't want to repeat myself, but there are not digital natives. There are digital orphans. These guys are great with any digital device, but they, for example, their user manual, I mean, they don't know how to use them in a creative or safe way. I mean, you must take the highest benefit of it for free. I mean, without giving anything from your privacy. So first of all, you have to do this. You have, well, during today and during the previous days, you have talked about a contract. I think that is a very creative way. But the important thing is to talk. And to talk, no, you have this, honey, this is for you. The smartphone is a computer, and that's it. No, that's not the point at all. You have to put any rules of use every day. For example, when we're having lunch, the cell phone is forbidden. If the smartphone rings, I say, "What's that?" when I see that on the table. So the other day, one of my daughters said, "Mom, what's that?" And I said, "Yeah, you're right. It's my smartphone." No. We have to teach them, but we have to learn from them. And the both way, the two-way communication, I think that is key. It's a key factor. And I totally agree with Mar, because the other day, as I was running around Madrid, and I found with a high school principal, and the Three Magic Kings had taken a smartphone to his daughter, and he said, "Jose, we have given to our daughter a contract, and we have been talking about what guidelines we have to follow." And I really liked that idea, because it says they are responsible parents. When you give a smartphone to a high school student, you are giving them a great amount of power. You just imagine that they don't know how to drive. You're giving the greatest car in the world. So, of course, they are going to crash. And I see that every day. You don't have to be scared of that. When we give a smartphone, we have to speak about it, because it's important that they don't have an accident. And if they have it, we'll chat. No problem. But I think that beforehand there must be a daily discussion, and it should be a topic to be dealt with during dinner time, for example. I don't know whether you've talked to your parents to explain them what do you do with your smartphone. I don't know, Luca, if you've talked to your parents about this. What do you do with your smartphone?
I was given my mobile with a contract that I had to sign with several conditions, and they forbid me to use it at lunch or at dinners, or to use it for very long periods of time, or to be hooked to it all day. What happens when there's a breach in your obligations? Normally they're quite soft in this, but when I do something really bad, they take it from me for a weekend or whatever. What about you, Juan? I was given my smartphone so I could communicate with my friends, and now I use it very little because I only use it for Instagram and WhatsApp, because I don't use it for anything else, and for calling, obviously. But they didn't give me any contract or anything, but they told me that I couldn't use it for certain things, and they also told me what would happen if I misused it. And based understanding that internet is cool, we've been talking about education. It's one of the aspects that was very interesting. For safety is the education in cybersecurity, and little rules about a safe use of these technologies, how to program an Android, how to close all the ports in a machine, and also about education in cybersecurity, both at parents' levels and students' level. I wanted to make a comment after what you said before. Do your parents know what apps you have installed in your mobile phone? Yes, every time I download something, they need to know, or I would be breaching my clauses in the contract. When I download an app in my mobile, I need to send them a request, and it won't be downloaded unless they accept it. It's a very good idea to have a previous filter, and talking about the ways for parents to protect the use of children of the internet. A basic rule would be common sense, applying common sense. It's the less common of all senses. It's very easy to say, but hard to put into practice. In the real world, parents and children are very aware that they cannot go around in the street screaming their names and telling the school where they go to, etc. But in the digital world, we provide a lot of information through our Instagram friends, Musical.ly, and other apps and social media that provide a lot, where we provide a lot of information that we would not be given freely in the real world. Something that we need to apply is to use the same correct behaviors in the real world in the digital world. Obviously, in the real world, certain things could have potentially bad consequences, but also in the digital world, they could have bad consequences. For instance, what they were telling before about greeting in WhatsApp. Everyone, when you start a group, and I think you can simplify it in WhatsApp, you can use either hello or good morning. But yes, you need to greet people also in a WhatsApp group. Internet is like the street. If you're telling your child not to cross the street here because they're dangerous, on the internet you have to tell your children that they cannot visit this website because there are threats and cyberbullying and many other behaviors that, besides being uncomfortable for other people, they could even be a crime. Some lawyers need to intervene sometimes when these behaviors take place. Internet is safe and unsafe, but we make it unsafe when we use it in the wrong way. If we step into the equivalent of bad neighborhoods in the internet, we might be taking too many risks. We need to educate our children to talk with their classmates in the patio or in the classroom in a certain way, and in the internet we have to do the same, because all bad things will have a digital proof and a footprint that will stay. If you mock somebody in a group, even if it's just a joke among friends, when this escalates and many people laugh or mock somebody, this person could be very hurt, and this could turn into a crime at some point. I would like to ask you a question. I defend the netiquette. You know what the netiquette is? You must know a little bit about what it is. Okay, that was not my question, but what do you think the netiquette is? It rings a bell, but I don't know what it is. Netiquette is the recommended behaviors in the digital environment, and it advises a certain way to behave in the network. Imagine you have a friend who has just received his first smartphone, and you would have to give him one advice because he doesn't have a clue about how to use it. What would be your only single advice? You can have some time to think about your answer, because it's key to think before we speak or to post in the internet. I would tell him not to trust anybody. If it's somebody they don't know or something they don't know about, they shouldn't trust it, because anything could be a scam in the internet. And what about publishing something? What would you tell him? To think about the consequences before he posts anything. I would tell him to get information and wonder why he's publishing what he's going to publish. It's not a bad idea, suggestion as an advice. Have you asked your friends for their permission to publish a picture in which they appear? Have you ever asked your friends if they wanted to be in that picture that you're going to post in the Facebook, for instance? No, I've never asked them. Very few times, but I've never been asked for permission to post a picture where I am, and I would like them to do it. And something you should do, it's a basic rule of netiquette. And something else is to edit the privacy configuration. Have you ever looked at the privacy configuration in the Instagram or any other social media that you participate? No, never. Yes, at the beginning when my profile was private, but you've never edited it permission by permission for each photograph that you publish, or the different degrees of friendship, etc. There's a big work to be done here. And I would like to take the opportunity to ask you about the responsibility that lies in the parents and in the learning centers. Well, first of all, as teachers, we need to be duly informed, and we need to be digital natives as well, and valid communicators towards our students, and also among parents. We need to be their reference in the technological field so that we can give the right answers when they ask us questions about this. This involves reading a lot of articles, coming into these type of conferences. This is necessary. And also it's the role of the parents that I think it's even more important, because they have the daily contact with their children and is much closer than that we can have as teachers. And they need to set some rules. They need to talk when there's a mistake that somebody has made. Obviously, when a kid gets into a social media, they're not aware of all the possibilities, and parents need to be to pay attention. A teacher can do part of the job, and a teacher can tell them if they have checked the privacy of a tab, for instance, but it's not common. when it comes to the private technological communication of each kid. So it's important for teachers to be informed, but I think that a great amount of responsibility lies in the parents when it comes to the education of their own children. I think they need to take into account something very important, both parents and tutors, which is to be role models with their own example. If I keep posting pictures in Facebook and I never ask for permission to anyone, then it's a rule. I read a piece of news where they talked about a kid who could ask his mother for 10,000 euros if she posted a picture of him again. And some parents have parental control apps in their kids' mobile phones, and this is key. They need to be aware, parents need to be aware that the responsibility, the ultimate responsibility, that until a certain age, they will be responsible for whatever the children post on the internet. It's not only the money that it could cost the parents, it's also about the etiquette, it's about the values, and also the parents need to set an example and make their children acknowledgeable for and responsible for what they do. They need to understand that this is the way to educate them in respect, self-control, so that children understand that it's not an environment where everything goes. I think communication and dialogue is very efficient, very effective. Some people have even been threatened. If we do not fulfill a contract, we will be punished. I think it's better to warn them in advance of the consequences of what could happen, not to lose their mobile phones, but what the consequences of losing their privacy and their being over trusting. Sometimes they don't realize that there's somebody behind the screen, and there's not one single person, it's millions of people at the other side of the screen. So there need to be a dialogue about the type of contents that children upload. This is the things that we need to be talking about. For instance, do you upload selfies? No, I don't. Maybe it's because I have daughters, because in Instagram there are many pictures that are mainly selfies. And when I ask them if they use hashtags, they ask me, why would I use hashtags? And the question is, why? Why are you posting this? Why are you, maybe you want to generate admiration, to gain followers, to to accompany an information that you're uploading, etc. But normally the main reason is to receive the likes and the positive comments that they receive. But anything in excess can be harmful, so we need to be very prudent. I would like to go back to the safety aspects of the device. I think that it's important to be role models, but it's also true that we all learn by our experience, especially by the bad experiences. We have all learned to install an antivirus when we have had a virus in our computers. Have you ever had that issue? Have you ever had a virus? Do you find this system of testing and test and error to learn? Do you think that's a good way of learning? Or should we avoid all these type of problems with prevention actions? Obviously, prevention can come from different ways. Maybe the test and error methodology. And when we talk about computer safety, what we recommend is small education and training about simple aspects. When she talks about the selfies, for instance, to geolocate the pictures could affect finding a job, for instance. It might not seem to have a lot to do with cyber safety, but at a certain age, some comments, some pictures, some videos stay in the internet, And this could potentially be a factor to get a job or not in the future. There is no manual that says this is where we need to start with. There are all types of devices, tablets, smartphones, consoles that are connected to the internet, laptops. There are basic usage guides, but privacy or adding people that you know, I would go back to the similarity with the real world. If something is right in the real world, it probably will be right in the digital world, and the opposite is also true, and we should be learning like this. For instance, changing passwords regularly is a good habit. We still find people who use 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 as a password, or their birth year, or their favorite food, or the name of the person and their birth year. And with social engineering, with very basic techniques, you can easily find that information that probably you wouldn't share in the real world. In the new technologies world and through the games, you give plenty of personal information. I ask my students, I didn't know this, there's only a survey among 300 students, but I discovered that their chats are mainly when they play online. How has it happened to you when you're playing Call of Duty or League of Legends or any other games? Have you ever chatted with people that you don't know at all? I don't play because I have younger brothers and I'm not allowed to play. I never play video games. I only play FIFA. And is it not online? I never play online, no. When they play among my students, I was surprised because I found out that they have these conversations, and normally it's just to enter a certain clan, but normally we would tell our children not to speak with just anybody on the street. Normally we would tell our children not to talk to strangers in the real world, but in the social media, this is not happening. Children are not warned. In the social media, on the internet, we keep talking with people we don't know. The way we behave in the digital world is not exactly the same way as we would behave in the real world. In the real world, you would not tell them to speak with strangers, but on the digital world, we would ask them to not speak with people of whom you don't know anything about. And mainly, you should tell them not to provide them with certain information, like when you're leaving for holidays, where you're going, what school you're attending, where you are at a certain time, etc. We need to wonder about why they have started thinking that all this information is normal to be given to strangers. How can nobody think about it? I have quarrels with my friends when they publish a picture that I don't want them to post, and I would be winning because I know how to fight for this. I remember 5-6 years ago, a friend posted a picture about an event, and he tagged my picture with the fake name. Why? What don't you understand about me not wanting to relate my profile, my face, with a fake name? It was pretty clear. Do you know what Google yourself is? Have you ever tried to look up yourselves in Google? For instance, if you Google us, you would get a lot of results in Google from any of us. You know what worries me? That these are just professional things, that my private life, the number of friends that I have is not in the on the internet for everyone to access it easily. So I select very well the information that is distributed about myself in the internet. Imagine what I do about the information of other people so that this information will never turn into a risk or a danger for these people. In this age range, the problem that you find is to provide that information, and then you add certain information like attachments or messages that have links to other things. Has it happened to you that you have sometimes clicked on a link that a friend has sent you, for instance? No, it has never happened to me. Well, sometimes they go very quickly through their WhatsApp conversations, and they move very quickly, and they open different links without really thinking, because a friend of theirs has sent them some information on a link, and those links could actually be the door to malware or to viruses, just because they're too fast in opening all sorts of content that gets to their mobile phones. This happens also to grown-ups. Obviously, the knowledge that they have is not the same as an adult. One of the advice that I like giving to children is to be selfish about their private information. Don't give it away as if it was worth nothing. And if you have any suspicion that they're asking for an information that they need not to have, ask people around you so that they can inform you if this is important, if you should be giving it or not. And obviously, the information that you're going to provide are personal experiences, and probably about your studies. You might post something, but probably you will be posting more about your social life. So I would say be careful and be selfish about your personal information. Also, when you see something that you think might hurt somebody else, do not share it. Do not contribute to disseminating that information. Recently, I was attending a case, and the principal of a high school was declaring, because you know that when you are using a public computer and you're checking your email, the passwords can remain in the browser. So one of the students had got the password and the details of a teacher, and he found out all this personal information about this teacher, and he resent it to another friend saying that it was confidential, and all this information was published in a public area, and all this private information of the teacher was disseminated among everyone. And we have been in the tribunal checking, and we were talking about all the students who had done it. We're trying to find out who actually was the first one to publish all this private information, and we will track the person who first published it. And it's very easy to pull the thread and to find a lot of information about the contents and the private content and who published it. Have you ever used one of these free Wi-Fi in a coffee shop or another place in a library, for instance? Yes, I have done it. Only when I'm very desperate, I do that. Define desperate. I need Wi-Fi to do something urgently. I like this type of panels because it's natural, the way they speak. Well, when it comes to open Wi-Fis, you need to be very careful. You don't need to be an expert. You just need to be to have a couple of tools that are very easy to find and use, and a hacker or a cyber criminal can get connected to the open Wi-Fi, analyze the connections that are on at a certain time, and analyze the data traffic and obtain personal information such as passwords or personal information, etc. So be careful with the free connections. When something is for free and you haven't paid anything for it, you are turned into the product yourself. So unless there's a real urgent need for you to connect to this type of network, at least be careful and do not get connected to your bank account or anything similar. Just use light connections. I wanted to resume to talk about the geolocation that Ophelia mentioned before. I don't know if you label the places where you are when you take the pictures and post them in Instagram, for instance, because a few years ago, there started to be some robberies in houses because the criminals used the social media accounts of the family to know when they would be on holidays, if there would be somebody in the house at a certain time, etc. So the physical damage is a real damage that can be caused because of this accessing digital information. Are you aware of this? Well, maybe if I post something in Instagram, I don't put it in the geolocation. I just write the name of something, but I don't say in what country it is or what city it is. But for instance, if I'm in a place that people might know, I don't say where it is. I can say I'm at my field, but I don't say where my field is, for instance. I used to do it before, but over Christmas or before Christmas, my uncle, he is a military, and he gave me he briefed me on safety aspects regarding the digital world, and he taught me that the geolocation was a way to inform everyone, even people who you don't know. You tell them where you are, and if this falls into the wrong hands, for instance, if you go on holidays to Galicia with your family, people will know that in your house in Madrid, there won't be anybody, and they can rob it. Many years ago, there was a website from the UK that was called pleaserobme.com, and they extracted open information from open profiles depending on the working times of the people, because everybody was posting like, I'm having breakfast here, I'm at work, I'm going to the gym, etc. And this website published all the information telling robbers that they could actually attack these houses because nobody would be at their house at that time. But as Hector said, we're not receiving that type of training. I would like to hear this, and for my colleagues at work to hear it. And actually, we do not get this information. We get information about cyberbullying, about sexting, but such specific things about cybersecurity, at least in my case, you really need to look for the information and to read a lot by yourself, because if you don't do it personally, I find it difficult for us to receive training. Do you have any plans to do this? I work in the Plan Director, and our conferences range from first year in primary school up to the later years, and we adapt the information that we give in our lectures to the audiences. We see that there is a great training from cyber collaborators about minors, but we see that people, teachers, and professionals from other fields are requesting for more information about what to do at a personal level. Very basic things that is not so much about knowing a lot, but more about carrying a certain routine in cybersecurity. But here it is on the record, your request for more training on these aspects. Training for the teachers so that they can convey it to their students and their parents. Sometimes we even deliver lectures to the local police so that they can handle all the people, all the claims from people. They lack the resources to follow up on them. It's more and more often than we hear about cases of crimes committed in the digital world. So we're growing more and more aware about the possibility of suing, and this leads us to the example. The news show us examples of things that we must not do. Every day we realize that these behaviors are not normal and we should be very careful.
Okay, so I'm going to change the topic. We're about to finish. We've been speaking about Donald Trump a while ago, and Donald Trump brings about the fake news. And there are many people that are creating their own consciousness, so to speak, through social media. Facebook is one of the most important portals to access news for many generations. I don't know if it is for yours too, but I don't know up to what extent this awareness through the internet or through social media, I don't know how it can alter or condition the youngest's education or things like that. Well, there's a tendency now in terms of the truthness of the information in the world of new technologies. There's something that could change what you are saying, the ways of thinking, ways of acting. So it's really complicated to know whether something on the internet is absolutely 100% true. A while ago, they have talked about Wikipedia, etc., and it's very complicated to know that because there are some behaviors, some ways of thinking. Well, someone has said that, whatever, this gets viral, everybody thinks that he has said that, nobody checks this information, and they are currents that change behavior. So how is it possible to modify a way of thinking depending on the content that exists in the new technologies world? This is the handicap. This is one of the problems that is related to cybersecurity for this year 2018, to know what information is true, and especially how to manage what type of actions can be taken when controlling this type of content. So before going on, where do you read news? Where do you get information at? Do you do it through your friends' profiles on social media? Well, I have a Marca newspaper. It's a sports newspaper, but I don't get many information on the internet. I do it on Wikipedia. Well, normally Wikipedia, yeah. It's the easiest thing for me. But, for example, hot news or news about politics, I know that you're not very interested in that, but the information that you get, where do you get it? Maybe my parents talk about it during the breakfast, or because I watch it on TV. And the famous WhatsApp chains that we receive, there are so many fake news. And sometimes on Twitter, the police puts a hashtag that it is a piece of fake news. And this information is received by children, and they trust on this information. Not only children, but also adults. This is why I was asking this question. They are getting information through more traditional channels that we do. Well, yes, many times I get messages sent or forwarded by people that say, well, if you forward this to 12 of your contacts, tonight I will kill you, or whatever. Or your wish won't become true. So there's a more aggressive version that it was about, we're going to close your account. No, this is much more aggressive. We're gonna kill you. No, I got one that said, well, I'm a puppet that died in the Second World War, and if you don't send this to 13 contacts in 5 minutes, I will kill you during the night. And what did you do? I'm curious about that. What did you do? No, yes, did you do it? Did you forward it? No, I didn't. Well, the curious thing is that all adults laugh at this, but at their level, or even when they are a little bit younger, they believe it absolutely. I have to send this to 10 people because otherwise this puppet from the Second World War will come along and he's going to kill me. So it seems something absurd for adults, but they really believe it through these type of channels, and they say, well, this is true, I'm going to send it just in case, and let's wait and see. Well, this happens to young people and to adult people. The other day, my mother, 75 years old, sent this paragraph in order not to take some drugs, because otherwise you could die. Yeah, these fake news get viral and they can modify behaviors. So the responsibility of who receives this information is, first of all, to double check it. It's true that when you start doing different works for the school or whatever, you are looking for different information on the net. You have to distinguish the right information from the wrong information, and to say, well, I'm not interested in this because I believe all this absurd things, my work won't be correct. Wikipedia is not always true because it's 100% it can be manipulated, of course. But do you double check the information that appears on Wikipedia to see whether it is right or wrong? I think, well, anybody can edit it, and until a reviewer decides to modified, you would be giving fake information. Do you check this information? No, they always tell me to do it, but I don't. I never do it. I just copy it, and that's it. No matter whether this is good or bad. No, this is not for teachers, okay? So I think that we should teach them what websites are good and which websites are bad. This morning, a teacher said that they authorize Wikipedia as a right source, and I was thinking about when I was doing my PhD, and I remember that my first part was about definitions in Wikipedia, and it was just date of birth and career. He told me off as you can't imagine. So this is the first and the last time that I've used Wikipedia. So trustability should be linked to media. There's a revolution with media that because of publishing instantly, they publish different absurd things that have been published on Twitter. And there's a legal responsibility. The media are must be true. I mean, so this is why we try on newspapers, no matter it's more on the right wing, on the left wing. No, this is the editorial line. It has nothing to do, but the information has to be right. So if I say that suddenly whoever has died because of something, and I try and start retweeting it, I'm publishing fake information. First of all, I should check whether there's any newspaper that has this piece of news, because I understand that these newspapers are working according to the law. So this cascade responsibility from the editor, from the newsroom, from the director, this is legally prosecutable. So these people could be prosecuted for publishing fake news. Even citizens, if they publish a piece of news that is fake about you, you can ask the newspaper to correct that information in 2 days' time. It's much easier when we were speaking about digital newspapers, because when they were paper newspapers, it was much more difficult. But these rights exist, and laws are there to be enforced. So internet is not a field without any door. There are things that fortunately can be considered as safe. Okay, great. So, and to wrap up, well, we've given the most negative view of all the panels, but I would like to give a positive remark. So what perspectives in terms of education, awareness, etc. could we have in terms of safety? Well, I would like to tell them that internet is cool. Internet is really necessary for children, both at personal, social, and even professional level, but we must know how to use it. We must have different information about cybersecurity, and especially related to the content and the information that we give. We mustn't be afraid of using it, but we must follow some guidelines to use it correctly. I think that we have contributed some positive things during the panel. All the people that are here believe that smartphones and technologies that are the main way of accessing the net are positive as far as we know how to use it correctly. He says that information is power. I say that knowledge is power. I love the sentence because that's the case. Your data are knowledge, and this is because they are a treasure. So when we have a doubt and we don't know how to move a specific app or a specific network, we should just ask whether people or colleagues, and to read, because there are many literature, there are many articles, there are websites that are more or less trustworthy. So you must hold a continuous dialogue with people from your family, your school, that can give you good pieces of advice. I would tell them that when using apps, they must take into account that at the other side there are people, that your contacts are friends from your classroom, are acquaintances, or are relatives. And these people, as happens to you, suffer when you do something that they don't like. So spreading contents that could be harmful and could be difficult. And I would recommend everybody that you should be very well trained. The best parental filter is here, in your head. And it's not about putting barriers or filters. You should be well trained, and you should acquire values, because in the end, this is what will make you do good use of technologies. What you won't do in your physical life, you shouldn't do it in your virtual life. So we take that call for common sense. Please do not tag in pictures without permission. And please, the government should give information to parents and teachers. And that's it. Thank you very much to you all. We hope that you have a safe digital life. And thank you to all the audience. Thank you.
Bueno, pues vamos a acabar en hora, que era un reto que yo quería cumplir.
So we're going to stick to time, even before. So I would like to wrap up this session with two concepts that have to do with children, teenagers, and technology. But with adults too, it's not the same to use technology, like to close windows, to upload files, to download things, to share pictures, to create profiles. It's not the same to use a technology that to understand how technology works. Our children don't really understand how technology works, how the approach of it, and they don't understand the consequences that they could be exposed to if they don't know how to use it. So we should help them understand how technology works. And for that, we should understand many of the paradoxes that have been mentioned today. And the second message, I conveyed it in this room 1 year ago. It's not the screen, it's not the keyboard, it's not the cell phone, it's not the tablet, it's not the PC, it's not the website, not the social media. It's the person who eventually pushes send or publish a comment, an opinion, or whatever. It's us. They must make mistakes because they are children and they are learning, and we can be wrong, of course, and we could revert the situation, not overreacting, and we should add digital culture so that they can gain digital culture. We must give them capabilities for the world that is about to come, and we must educate them in values and aspects like self-control. I think that we can make it, and the best way of accomplishing it, as the Digital Citizen Institute spirit says, is better together. And as we are concerned about how new generations use technology, or the example that we adults give when we use technology, as we are so much concerned, we must be the digital change, and we shouldn't wait for others to be. I hope that today's session and panels have been useful to open many discussions at home or at work. I hope that you chat to your children, your friends, your colleagues, and I hope to see you again in the second edition, volume 2 of DigCitSummitES. Thank you very much.